I subscribe to a good work ethic. I believe that if you have these two characteristics for the millennials listening, a great work ethic and passionate curiosity. If you have those two things, you can learn anything, you can adapt, and you can become whatever you want to become. Most people quit when the going gets hard, so they never have the work ethic. And most people suffer from their ego taking control where they don't want to look bad. So they go, yeah, no, I know that. And they don't become a student.
Hi there, friends. Welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast, a personal development show for millennials interested in entrepreneurship. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome Rock Thomas to the Mastermind. Rock, coming from humble beginnings on a small farm in Canada, became a self-made millionaire running several successful businesses and just killing it in the real estate game. But that was just the beginning. After achieving massive financial success, Rock embarked on a lifelong journey of learning and personal growth. He's traveled the world and studied with some of the world's most acclaimed teachers, such as Tony Robbins, Jack Canfield, Stephen Covey, Deepak Chopra, just to name a few. And now he's turned his focus onto teaching, much to the benefit of me and you. He founded Rock Thomas International to bring the top personal development strategies and success formulas to the masses. Through keynote speaking, best-selling books, life-changing programs, and coaching, he's helped individuals make massive changes in their lives. His Goalcast video alone touched over 54 million lives. So I'm going to come down for some air here, Rock, but welcome to the show.
I am excited to be here. Anytime I get to share my failures with other people so they can hopefully avoid them is a great day for me. So thanks for having me, Brad.
Absolutely. And just in the couple of minutes we're catching up before we hit record here, I started to get so excited about this interview. I already was, and now my blood's boiling. So I'm excited to dive right into it. But I'd love to start from the beginning and understand, in those early days, how did you achieve that original financial success? And generally, what age were you at that time frame in your life?
So I think there's a few ways to become successful, Brad. And for me, the one strategy I used at the beginning was hard work. I grew up on a farm and I learned to work 12, 14, 16 hours a day. And that became my normal. So to get 2 or 3 jobs at a time was easy. To live off of very little money was easy. And I was fortunate enough that I grew up without a TV. So I learned to read a lot. And I learned that you need to pay yourself first. At a very young age, the concept of saving money and saving for your future self became evident. A lot of people live in the moment and immediate gratification. They want the next iPhone, etc. You can still do that if you pay yourself off the top, if you're disciplined and you follow a system. I was doing that at a young age. So I started to even buy real estate at a very young age. But the primary vehicle I use to answer your question is work hard. Just work hard, work hard, work hard. And I was passionate about living a full life. I was afraid of one day being dead and having regrets. So every day I woke up, I jumped out of bed, I got excited, and I plowed away at something. Most people, unfortunately, don't have that hunger, or they haven't nourished that hunger. A lot of people say, oh yeah, but I'm not that excited about life. I'm not that passionate. There's a way to feed that. I've learned to self-motivate. And that's something that I've gotten really good at. So hard work was the first vehicle. Then I went into smart work. Then I went into leveraging people and leveraging money. Today I have 36 streams of income. I don't have to work, but it was a process. And at the age of 30, I was broke. So for those of you that are listening, I'm 56 today. I went from broke to millionaire in about 4.5 years. And then I went on to, make other mistakes, but it's been pretty much forward from there.
So I'm curious, a lot of your journey has been around personal development, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. But what came first for you? Was it the financial success, or was it the focus on personal development and self-growth?
No, it was at the age of 13 or 14, my brother beat me up to the point where I almost died. And I remember saying to myself in that moment, And we all have moments of that, by the way. Something significant happens to you and you go, this sucks. I have to change the way I'm operating, or I'm going to die. I'm going to be alone. I'm never going to make it. And there's usually one that happens before you're 7 to 14, and 14 to 21. 3 distinctive events that happen in your life. Most people aren't conscious of it, but if you do the work, you can become conscious of it, and you can create a strong suit from it psychologically. My strong suits are, I am incredibly strategic. I see what other people can't see. I would make a phenomenal coach of a sports team. Almost every team that I get on in a pickup environment, football, frisbee, volleyball, whatever, I almost always win. Not because I'm so good, but because I have a strategic mind adapted from the need to survive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. And do you think that that's something you were born with, or that based on those early life experiences, you had to adapt that strategic perspective?
Yeah, it's 100% adapted. It's how you respond to an event. It's either fight or flight. We all do it. Some people have the same event that I had, and they become introverts, and they become chess players or programmers, and they hide behind something because they don't want to face the controversy or adversity. For me, what I did was I went, screw you. When I go to play football, I would look for the best player. I would take the best player on. I'd trash talk him. I'd get in his face and I'd say, you are going down. I'm going to make your life a misery. You will not score. And I use that as a catalyst to step up and become better. Because I thought if I could take on the best, the hardest, the most difficult, even if I killed myself doing it, then I would be a hero. And that's what I craved, was to be the hero. And from that, I started to notice things that other people didn't notice, because most people are just coming out for a little pickup game and they didn't have the same commitment I did. Now, other people have had other events and they've learned something different from it. They become, compassionate. So the question was, how do you take what you learned and adapt from it? So for me, I decided I was going to make a lot of money, because a lot of money meant freedom, because we grew up with very little. Somebody else will come to a different conclusion. My son is really good at relationships because he saw broken families, and he says, you know what, the most important thing in my life are relationships. So the event, the meaning you attach to it, the adapted behavior creates your identity.
Very interesting. And so I want to get back also to something you said right at the beginning of this episode, that you're excited to share some of your failures so people can learn from those. So obviously you've had a lot of success in your life, but how have those failures and the challenges that you've run into, I mean, we just talked about adapting to those, but have there been other specific failures that have really pushed you into the direction that your life ultimately went?
Yeah, of course. There's dozens of them. One of them happened when I was around my mid-20s. I was working as a busboy in a restaurant to put myself through college. And I subscribe to a good work ethic. I believe that if you have these two characteristics, for the millennials listening, a great work ethic and passionate curiosity. If you have those two things, you can learn anything, you can adapt, and you can become whatever you want to become. Most people quit when the going gets hard, so they never have the work ethic. And most people suffer from their ego taking control, where they don't want to look bad. So they go, yeah, no, I know that. And they don't become a student. I was golfing the other day practicing putting, and I saw this 16-year-old kid with mirrors on the ground and strings set up and all kinds of stuff. And I went over to him and I asked him what he was doing. And he had all this science behind putting. And for 5 or 10 minutes, I just got absorbed in his world. I went from mentor to mentee. I went from I know it all to I know nothing. And I think that's a really important part. If you look at the most sages in the world, they don't talk very much. They ask a lot of questions. Even of the homeless person, they'll ask the question, what's it like? What do you like about being homeless? How did you end up here? What do you look forward to? They're always in a curiosity mode. So I showed up early and stayed late at the restaurant. I filled in the gaps for this guy who owned the restaurant so he could spend time with his kids. I over-delivered value, and then he offered for me to become a partner. I borrowed 20 grand from my mom, became a partner. 6 months later, we went bankrupt. Lesson number one. So I went on to go into the airlines, park cars at a hotel, and then I bought my first piece of real estate with $2,000 on a credit card. with physically and mentally handicapped people, hired somebody to run that during the day, and I took care of them at night. And with these 3 jobs, I paid my mom back to $20,000 in 18 months. So the lesson was, over deliver, get opportunities, but also know what your lane is. I knew nothing about restaurants. It just seemed like a good idea, but I learned a lot, and I made a great friend, and it opened up the next door. And Winston Churchill says that success is maintaining your enthusiasm in spite of your setbacks. I think, unfortunately, what happens to people is they bankrupt a restaurant like that and they become an employee for the rest of their life. They go, oh, I've got to do that again. That sucked. That was so painful. I'm the opposite. I'm like, I'm going to now invest that lesson into becoming better. And if you can lose $20,000, next time you lose 10, you're like, no problem. And if you're going to play in the big leagues, you're going to throw the touchdown pass on the last play of the Super Bowl, and somebody's going to catch it and somebody's going to miss it. And you're going to live with that emotional capacity to bring that into the next game. I look for ways to increase my emotional capacity to handle adversity. And that is the ultimate confidence builder. Does that make sense as well?
It does. And what are those ways that you've looked for, that you've found to enhance that emotional capacity to face adversity?
Say yes to things that are outside your comfort zone. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. 3, 2, 1, go. Walk across the room and ask that girl out on a date that you're nervous to. Make mistakes and get comfortable with making mistakes. People want to be perfect. Biggest mistake is fail faster and start to watch yourself fail. I'm comfortable with being foolish, silly. If somebody says to me, get up and dance in front of a bunch of people while I'm waiting for a plane just for the hell of it, I might do it because I'm the one that gets to grow. People are so concerned about what other people are thinking of them. They don't want to make any mistakes. They don't want to be embarrassed or look foolish. If it's not going to kill you, it's not going to hurt anybody else, it's not immoral or illegal, then there's a chance it'll cause you to grow. When I'm coaching clients, I often say to them, for the next week, as part of your growth process, I want you to brush your teeth with the opposite hand. I want you to get into the car from the passenger seat and climb over the seat and get into the car just so you appreciate what it's like to get in the other side and see what happens to your brain as you have to handle that minor obstacle. Get used to doing things that are uncomfortable. And then when the big event comes up, it'll be easy.
That's really interesting advice. And one of a small way that I just want to share with the audience that I've been practicing this is cold showers. They sound miserable. They're even more miserable in person, but throwing 30 seconds of ice cold water on the end of your shower is a great way to throw yourself into a uncomfortable situation that you're choosing to actually endure. And I've actually been able to notice some of the benefits from that. And there's a lot of physiological benefits as well. So I like some of those examples you bring up as well. You also mentioned that people sometimes neglect or avoid becoming a student because of their ego. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that, as ego is something that just in the last couple of years I've started to recognize, have by no stretch of the imagination mastered, but am aware of it now. So how do you think about ego and avoid the pitfalls that sometimes come along with our own personal egos?
Yeah, great question. To me, I divide my spirit up into my higher self and my lower self. And the lower self acts out of fear of not being enough, not being wanted, recognized, rich enough, good looking enough, smart enough, funny enough, etc. It's basically plays in the realm of I'm not enough. And it uses that fear as a motivator, which can be good in certain situations. The higher self comes from love, and it comes from giving, generosity, acceptance, understanding that, a stream is not a straight path. It winds and weaves around nature. It goes at the speed of nature. It doesn't try to force things. It's more adaptable. It's more gentle. It's more caring. So when I'm in those emotions, I'm coming from my higher self. I feel as though I am enough and I don't have to impose myself on the world or on other people. It's more trusting. When I'm in my lower self, it's like, I don't have enough money. That other person is doing a better job than me. They're making me look bad. I need to criticize them. I need to show that I'm better. So I'm going to steal the glory. So when I divide myself into those two areas, I just simply say, okay, my ego's operating right now out of some fear, some pattern, etc. We're triggered from our youth, from meanings that we've come up to. A lot of people that follow my work are familiar with the I am statements. So if your mother or father or teacher said to you, you're just stupid with math. You're just no good with numbers. I can't believe that you got that result. Well, maybe you have a different learning style. Maybe you were daydreaming. Maybe you were bored. Maybe you're super intelligent. You didn't pay attention to the exercise and you made a mistake. And then the teacher labeled you as stupid. And you hung on to that now for the rest of your life. I have several clients, as we help them with their budgets, break through to find out why they don't do them, only to learn that somebody told them that they're bad with numbers. So they spent no time developing that skill. They didn't put any hours into it. And now their ego spends time defending or protecting or pretending that they don't like numbers or it's useless or budgets are a waste of time. And they come up with what we call a story, right, around why that particular area isn't going to serve them, versus being vulnerable, authentic, and open and saying, hey, you know what? I just haven't had a practice, or I'm not good at that right now. And then we'll say, well, you just maybe you used to not be good at it, but if we put attention on it, you can become better. So ego is just fear. Anytime you're in fear, you're in your ego. Anytime you come from that fullness that we have all experienced, unfortunately for some people, they need some sort of drug or alcohol to get them there, but they know what the feeling is like at least. But when you do the work, in my opinion, Brad, on yourself, and you spend some time in meditation and visualization, I like to say that your friends are comfortable with your present, your mentors are comfortable with your future. Your mentors see you in your higher self, and those are the people that you want to start to have more conversations with to help you spend more time there.
So that's really interesting, and I would love to understand how can we, if we're not as practiced in recognizing when we're living in that higher self or lower self, step back and consciously recognize that we're coming from that position of the lower self and that position of fear so that we can alter our course, especially if it's something that's kind of subconsciously wired based on one of those past experiences. And maybe we are telling ourselves that story of why you aren't doing something, or really putting some false bravado behind it. How can we step back and recognize that?
So awareness is the first step to change, and then understanding the root of where it comes is the second step. Personal development is an ongoing, as we say, the training's always in. So it's not like you work out one weekend and you're in shape for the rest of your life or the rest of the year. Same thing with personal development. If we understand the psychology behind it, our brain is 2 million years old and it's got one job, which is to keep you alive. So every day when you wake up, you hit the reset button, you open your eyes, your brain's first thing it's doing is scanning to make sure you're safe. Is the roof falling in? Is it warm enough? Do I have enough food? Do I have enough time? And it's constantly gauging and measuring to keep you alive. Imagine if it didn't do that and you just got up and you walked into a scalding hot shower, you burnt yourself, then you went in and you sat on the stove and burnt yourself. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would be ridiculous. So it has to do its job. The problem is there's no manual that came to understand that there's no saber-toothed tigers anymore that are there to get you. So just worrying about being stuck in traffic and being 5 minutes late for an appointment can freak some people out because they haven't managed it and understood the implications. So you got to first become aware that 95% of your self-talk is going to be negative. And then start to create new patterns of conversation, start to trust a little bit more. And like when I work with people, I don't necessarily just coach them. I direct them to resources. When I hear what their challenge is, I might say, well, you should read this book by Brené Brown, or you should read this book by Dr. Hawkins. So they can get it from the source of what's helped me in order to appreciate. It's a little cliche, but how much time does the average person spend in gratitude in a day? I have regular gratitude practices. I wake up and I'm grateful for, the bed I slept in. And when you start to nurture that muscle, you all of a sudden feel better. When you feel better, you want to take more action. You take more action, you get better results. You get better results. You want to continue the cycle going. So I don't know if that answers your questions. I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, it does. And one word specifically that you mentioned there was practice. And I think that's an important concept to latch onto, is that it requires a focused practice and a conscious practice to be able to start getting better at some of these things, whether it's gratitude or just taking a step back and recognizing the mindset that you're currently in. And also, if people take one thing away from this podcast, I want it to be, don't sit on a hot stove in the morning. That's a bad way to start your day. But I know that you've spent some time studying with these personal development gurus, the Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopras of the world. How were you able to get yourself in the same room as these folks and spend time with them and learn from the best?
Well, it's a great question, because a lot of people say, how do you find a mentor? And what's always worked for me is to go to places where there are people that have more experience than me. Try to not be the smartest or wealthiest or most energetic person in the room. The three major areas people really want results in their life are financially, health-wise, or what I like to call energy-wise, and relationship-wise. We want passionate relationships. We want fun relationships. The human spirit wants to belong. It wants to connect, and it wants to make a difference. So we're all looking for the vehicles in the environment to do that. I'm fortunate that I get to do that in the companies that I run, and with some of the masterminds I have, where I have people that have raised their hand and we have shared values in similar areas of contribution and fun and relationships. But I just go into a room or buy a ticket to an event, and then I tell myself, why not go up to that person? Or if I meet somebody or see somebody else in that room that I think has got great energy, you can tell people that have an awareness, they're alive, they look alert, they look like they're turned on, like they're excited about life. I just go up and introduce myself, and I might say something like, you seem like a really cool person. I'd love to learn more about what you're passionate about. So I really just go up to a lot of people. And then when I find the ones, I'd say, I'd like to spend more time with you. And they go, yeah, well, I'm a coach or I'm a mentor like Tony Robbins. And I said, well, what will it cost me to spend time with you? And he says, about $100,000. I said, all righty then, let me get back to you. And I ended up joining his Platinum Partners, and I spent some one-on-one time with Tony back in 1991, believe it or not. And I did the same thing with Deepak Chopra, and Jack Canfield was, he mentored me on writing my first book because I asked him to. So I guess to answer the question is, some people you're going to have to pay because that's what they do for a living and that's their passion, and they have systems and strategies that are worth it for you to model. I call it the 3 M's. Find your mentor, model them until you become a master like they are. And then life is easy when you've mastered something. You can walk, talk, drive a car now today because you put in the many hours and your unconscious mind takes over and does the heavy lifting for you. If you want to be really good at making money, find somebody, example like myself, who has 36 streams of income, hang around, find out their beliefs, their rituals, their attitudes, their practices, and then model them until you get to a place where it's easy too. And that's the way that you accelerate your success. Anybody that is currently having a difficult time in any area of your life, you have not paid the price of modeling somebody and sticking with it until your unconscious mind was able to take over some of the tasks for you. You're still in a conscious mindset of not being, the 4 stages of learning. You're consciously incompetent. You want to get to a place where you can brush your teeth and daydream or drive the car, sip on your coffee, change the music, be on the phone and do all those things because you've delegated the heavy lifting to your unconscious mind. And in my opinion, the best way to do that is to find those mentors. And the last thing I'll say, because I answered long 2 questions, is the same way in the restaurant, I solved a problem for my mentor. He actually was the guy who first taught me about interpersonal skills. And I was a very shy, introverted kid that grew up on a farm. And he spoke 5 languages. He was really good with people. And he taught me how to interact with people and create rapport and pay them a compliment and use their name and smile and simple things that a lot of people don't do. And therefore they're uncomfortable meeting people. In exchange, what I did was I showed up early and I stayed late, and it was win-win. A mentor loves, I'll say it again, a mentor loves to download their experience and wisdom to an excited, curious, passionate student. You show up that way, make them coffee, take their dry cleaning, do whatever you wash their car, whatever you have to do, hang around them, and it will pay you a multiple reward. And that's all you have to do.
I love that they're just waiting to download their wisdom to excited, passionate, and curious individuals, and looking for ways to solve problems for them. And the other major takeaway I took away from that too circles back to recognition of fear. And a lot of time it's A, putting yourself in a position to be in the room with some of these individuals, and B, overcoming your own fear of going up and actually talking to them, seeing how you can add value, seeing where the opportunity might be there, and just asking the question like, Jack Canfield, will you help me write a best-selling book? I mean, it just comes back to that central theme, it feels like.
Well, think about it. The reason I wouldn't ask Jack Canfield is because I have an inner narrative going, well, who am I? He's going to say no, he's too busy. And it's all made up in my head. So the most important thing for any one of us in the journey to success is the conversation we have with ourselves, which, by the way, most of us take ourselves out before the race even begins, before we start the business, before we ask the girl on a date, before we step on stage and tell the group about something we're excited about. We take ourselves out. We're the worst critic. So I've been working in this field for 30 plus years, and still to this day, whether it's a person making $100 million a year, I've worked with billionaires, they still fight the inner critic. It just changes. The guy who's the billionaire now has to go, well, I gotta come up with a new product. I gotta improve over last year. I have to maintain the growth. I have to be the inspiration. I'm having an argument with my wife. My kid doesn't talk to me anymore, but I got to stand in front of the company and pretend like everything's okay, because otherwise the stock price is going to go down. The challenges change, but the inner narrative, that's the most important thing. So what do? You must have rituals around the conversation you have with yourself. I say to people, tell me what you do before 8 o'clock in the morning and after 8 o'clock at night, and I can predict your financial future for the rest of your life.
So I'm thinking that those morning or evening routines will be part of your answer to this next question, but are there specific tools that you recommend to help facilitate that conversation with yourself, to make sure it's a positive one and to make sure that you're staying in front of that self-talk?
Of course. So number one is who you hang out with. And I know it sounds so simplistic, but the reality is your friends are comfortable with your present and your mentors are comfortable with your future. I spent New Year's Eve with 6 other couples, all of them high-producing authors, trainers, speakers. And guess what? New Year's Eve, we had a pajama party and we put posters on the wall. We talked about our goals and our past successes, and we had an amazing time. That's not your average New Year's celebration, right? But that's because we spend time with like-minded people that want to grow. The second thing for me is, Tony calls them incantations. Other people call them affirmations, but it's a directed focus. When I wake up in the morning, I have a 5.5-minute I am statement recorded on my phone that reminds me about me and my higher self, who I am. I'm generous. I'm playful. I'm trusting. I'm gifted. I'm guided, grateful, passionate, playful, sexy, sensual. There's ways that you've got to reprogram and remind yourself of you at your best, because the world is going to propose to you, you're not good enough. You should look like this on TV. You're not making enough money. You're not growing fast enough. Somebody else posts a picture on social media that makes them look better than you, and you feel shitty inside, so then you want to fold your tent and go home. So yeah, you've got to nurture it with affirmations, reading to yourself, listening to motivational, inspiring stories where you go, oh, that guy sounds just like me. I can do it too then. And then start to develop that inner dialogue. And as you do that, you'll want to take more action.
So you created this thing called the I Am movement. I think this is a great lead into that. Can you explain what that is? Is that just what you were talking about, or fill our listeners and myself in on what the I Am movement entails?
Yeah, so that came out of my brother calling me pizza face. I had so much acne growing up that, he was shorter than me, and came from different parents, and he wanted to take a chip out of me. The fastest way to have the tallest building in town is to knock the other ones down. It's easier to knock things down than to build them. So he kept on taking a piece out of me because he felt intimidated by me, and I let it get to me. And it took me till my late 20s when I met a mentor who taught me about the fact that labels are just suggestions. I'll say that again, Brad. Labels are just suggestions. I could say to you, you're good looking, or I could say to you, you're ugly. I could say to you that you'll never amount to much, or I could say that you're going to become, the greatest author, speaker, podcaster in the world. They're just suggestions. But what resonates often with people are where they think there's enough evidence. So I ran to the mirror, I looked in the mirror, I saw pimples on my face, and I thought, oh my God, who else thinks I'm ugly? Pizza face. And then I started to get nervous of going to school. So I stopped going to school. I faked being sick. And for years, I suffered by getting up every day and looking in the mirror and going, you are ugly. I am ugly. And then later, I had a mentor who taught me that the I am statements eventually is how you show up in your. I am introverted. I am bad with numbers. I am funny. You go to a party and you go, I keep on hearing I'm funny. I guess I better be funny. So you start cracking jokes until you become the funny guy. So if you want to transform something that isn't working in your life, you have to ask yourself, is that me and my higher self or lower self, or is there another option? So you could be a really bad putter in golf, but you could say, I am a great putter. I am getting better and better every day. I am an awesome putter. I see the line. And you start to talk yourself into the new part of yourself. I'm sure, Brad, you've had things that at one point in time you thought you were that way, and then you've transformed. Maybe you were not so good at hosting a podcast, but today you're a podcast host. One day you weren't, right?
That's absolutely right. And one day I was a very novice intro beginner podcast host for sure.
Right. So now you have evidence and your confidence goes up. So here's what you can do if you're not there yet, is you act as if you're there. So let's say I want to run my own podcast. I could talk to you about what you did, what the journey was, what you think is important, and what you believe about it, how you get prepared, and basically just pick your brain on everything. And by the way, if I was interested in doing that, would you be willing to share that with me?
100%.
And why is that?
I think a big piece of it is that going through the struggle of learning these things myself, I want to make that an easier process for anybody else, especially because I've grown to become so passionate about the art of podcasting that I'm an advocate, and I want as many people as I could possibly get involved to experience the joy of putting your own content out in the world that other people benefit from.
And so let's say I go on to make my own podcast and I call you up a few months later and I say, Brad, I just want to thank you so much. You know what? I was able to do it so much easier because you helped me. It's really, really great. Thank you, buddy. How would you feel?
Amazing. That would be a great feeling.
It's one of the emotions that most humans crave. And sadly, most people don't get to experience it because they don't think that their story is good enough. They don't put themselves in a position to help other people. They're not like, if you said, hey, anybody want to start a podcast, hit me up, I'll help you out. I'm more than happy to do so. I went through a lot of learnings. I could help shorten the curve for you. You'd probably have some people. And I think that that's the whole part of you and I talked about the mastermind. I started this mastermind with your and my buddy Tim Rhodes 6 years ago. And we started because we wanted to help each other get to the top faster. And my net worth has quadrupled in the last 6 years. I've got tons of friends that have transformed my life. Opportunities. If I go into a town, as usually I could go stay at a buddy's house or borrow their car or what have you. The number of benefits of being part of a global mastermind group are huge because it's like this ecosystem of people that want your life to be awesome.
Yeah, that's been very much my experience on our even smaller level mastermind that I host, and that's only with 7 people. So being able to find those ones like some of the ones you're talking about, things like GoBundance and these other opportunities that are out there, to surround yourself with those amazing individuals who are like-minded and looking to drive forward and achieve success for themselves and for everybody else in the group, are just unbelievable opportunities.
Yeah, and we have a thing called support, encourage, and challenge. So think about your friends. Your friends will support you generally. Hopefully they'll encourage you. And often they won't do all 3, including the challenge. So they might support and encourage you, but they won't challenge you. Or they'll challenge you all the time. Come on, man, come on, come on. But they don't really support you. They don't have resources to help you. But think about if you could be in an ecosystem where people will support you. It's kind of like a tree that grows in the soil, and the soil is rich enough to provide a place for the roots to anchor themselves. The sun is the encouragement. It causes the tree to grow. Without any sun, the tree doesn't grow. It's a desert, or it's a barren piece of land because the soil isn't rich enough. But the wind provides the challenge. So you need a little bit of wind, because if one day there's a storm and you've never had any wind, you've never had any challenge from your friends, and all of a sudden the shit goes down, all of a sudden you fall over, you get knocked down, you're not used to getting up. So it is that beautiful ecosystem of just enough of the 3 that causes you to thrive. Imagine a student, a child who their parents make the bed for them, do their homework, make their lunch, fight their battles at school for them when they get picked on. And then they go into the real world and they get smacked around. They can't survive, and they want to quit and go home, and they live at home when they're 40 years old. That's what happened, is they had too much support, maybe even too much encouragement, but not enough challenge. So in my world, we have this, brutal honesty with each other and say, dude, what do you do? Like, that part does not make sense to me. But over there, if you're going to start your podcast, here are all the resources I have. I can help you out. Talk to this person, talk to that person. The way you get accelerated success is to be around people that care enough with you to tell you the truth, not to sugarcoat it.
How do you recommend people find that right group for them, or that right ecosystem where those 3 elements of support, encouragement, and challenge are present?
Well, I think it really depends on your value system. So there's a million masterminds out there in the terms of YPO and EO and Tiger 21 and different things like that. For me, what resonates with us is relationships, contribution, fun, passive income, and health. So we created organizations around that, and we really believe that time is our most precious commodity. So we focus on ways that you can make money while you're sleeping. People think that it's so not possible for them most of the time. They're like, well, I would if I could, but I don't have money, I don't have time. And their inner narrative is negative because they're not around the mentors that have done it before. The typical average person in the millionaire next door became a millionaire by making quality decisions and living a little bit below their means for a short period of time, investing the difference, and then getting the edge on life. So you got to, first of all, decide what you value, what's important to you, and then look for the group. You can Google it. You can talk to people. For us in GoBundance, we like to do bucket list adventures. We call ourselves the tribe of healthy, wealthy, generous people that choose to lead epic lives and don't apologize for being awesome. So we do trips around the world, and we help each other develop our passive income without giving up our health and our relationships. And we might spend time talking about the 5 love languages, or how to be a better father or son, and things like that, because that's important to us. But for me, I started a tribe called M1, March to a Million, because 97% of the population are not millionaires. They have terrible money management habits because we're not taught that in school. And they usually are saddled with debt from the get-go, either student debt, credit card debt, or they get a fancy car, a nice apartment, and maybe get, into a relationship and get a mortgage, what have you. And they're usually behind the 8 ball from the get-go. But there's some really simplistic ways that you can get ahead in life by having a side hustle, by doing something innovative, by being creative, by casting some consciousness on what you're doing day in and day out. And I've helped 40 people become millionaires in the last 3 years. It's obvious there's a system to do it. And I'm not saying it's easy, but once you know the system, it's a lot easier than not knowing the system. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super cool. And how can people learn more about that group?
Yeah, so just go to the URL gom1.com. You'll fill out a little questionnaire. Then you'll have a little assignment because we don't accept everybody. We'll have a tiny little assignment to see if you're serious or not about wanting to come into our ecosystem. You can also get my free book at rockthomas.com, The Power of Your Identity. And then we'll start the conversation. And if you're hungry, you want to be around other people that are marching toward their million, you want to be in an ecosystem where you're going to be supported, encouraged, and challenged to make that happen, then it's a 3-part conversation with a few interviews. And you get to talk to people that are in the community, what their experience is, so you can assess whether it makes sense to you. And, as long as you're hungry, and like I said before, you're willing to show up, put some work into yourself, and you're passionately curious, then we will accelerate your success.
Super cool. Well, we'll make sure to have all that linked up in the show notes too, so that people can find those resources and those links to learn more. Rock, one question I love to ask all the guests who come on this show, especially those who have already achieved just massive results in their lives, is if you could go back in time and maybe for you going back to yourself when you were in your 20s, maybe 29, right before, you hit that point where you were going through some of the struggles you mentioned earlier in the episode. Is there one piece of advice that you would give to yourself then based on what you've learned over these past 25 years of just massive success?
Yeah, I would say that you want to still have your own personal perspective on life. But I have a thing that I learned from Ray Dalio, the greatest investor of our time, who runs the largest hedge fund in the world. He calls it triangulation. And it's in the vein of mastermind, is have 3, 4, 5, you have a group of 7, probably including yourself, 6 other people. You want to have some people that have more insights than you do. We call it meritocracy, that have merit in that area. The same way you don't go to a gym and have a trainer that is out of shape. You should not listen to your broke uncle when it comes to investments, or your Uber driver, or the girl at Starbucks about buying the next stock. You're an idiot if you do that. Now, they may be right once in a while, but as a general rule, you want to listen to people who have merit in an area. So the most important thing, especially in my opinion, for a millennial today, is developing and gathering people that have more merit than you do in the areas of life that you want to improve. And it's been shown again and again. Sidney Crosby, arguably the best hockey player in the world, was drafted by Pittsburgh, and he lived with Mario Lemieux, who was arguably the best of his time. He hung around with him. He ate what he ate. He talked like he talked. He practiced like he practiced. And there's a reason why he took his gift and took it to the next level. Warren Buffett had a mentor. All these people that do super well had mentors. I think Mark Zuckerberg's mentor was Steve Jobs. So surround yourself and make it part of your life's project to gather mentors and then listen to their experience and wisdom. And as you do that, you can make better choices. If you're going to make an investment in real estate, talk to 3 people who have a lot of experience and tell them to poke holes in your project. Have the courage to say, here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to buy this triplex. Here are the numbers on it. Rip it apart for me and tell me why it's a shitty deal. Most people will never do that. They're like, oh, I think it's good. I'm so desperate to get into the game. And they convince themselves it's good. And then they do it on their own and they have a blind spot. If you're going to work out or run a marathon, talk to 3 people that run Ironman or marathons and tell them, here's my training, here's why I want to do it, here's what I'm thinking, here's my plan, and have them rip it apart and add to it. To me, that's the number one thing you could do, is surround yourself with people who have more merit than you before you venture and invest into a project that you're going to dive into.
I absolutely love it. And I think that's a pretty great place to start to wrap things up. We mentioned the couple of links, gom1.com to learn more about March to a Million, and also rockthomas.com. Rock, is there anywhere else you would point people to learn more about with what you're up to or engage with you?
Yeah, I have a Facebook group called Rock Thomas International, or Your Epic Life Blueprint. I do some free content on that. Sometimes people aren't in a position to really, embark on the journey of investing in personal growth at the rate that some other people do. I've spent over $1 million in personal development. Some people don't even want to spend $50. So then get onto the podcasts, get onto some of the Facebook communities that resonate with you, listen to some of the free content. And then I would say, don't just listen to it. Try to, take one concept or idea and act upon it. Listen to Mel Robbins has a great book called The 5 Second Rule. And it's really like the blast off of the shuttle, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 95% of people will hesitate. Like when I told you about the 16-year-old kid that was practicing putting, I had a moment of not wanting to bother him. I had a moment of my little voice going, well, he's got earbuds in, then you're going to have to interrupt him. Maybe he's listening to cool music, and that's going to be awkward. And then this shows up for all of us. You lie if it doesn't. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take action. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go up to that potential mentor and keep on taking action on the things you're learning if you're in a place where you can't make a major investment into a mastermind or go to a seminar or something like that.
Mel, after talking about Mel Robbins, got me excited about the 5 Second Rule book all over again. Rock, I just want to appreciate my gratitude to you for coming on, being willing to share some of your success tips, also what you've learned from your failures. There's a ton of valuable insights in this episode. So thank you so much for spending time with us here today.
Yeah, my pleasure. And let me say one last thing is that I tell myself I am an excellent student. And it's an I am statement. And I would encourage everybody that's listening to this to embody that. If you want to, you don't have to. But I think the edge today is the ability to be a very good student. Information is changing. The world is changing so rapidly that if you're not really a passionate student about life, I learned to become a drummer in my 40s, even though I believed I was tone deaf. But it was a dream of mine. I wrote a book, even though I'm dyslexic. So whatever you may have as a limitation, one of the biggest obstacles is your own inner narrative saying, I'm not a good student. So I would invite everybody to write somewhere on their mirror, their wall, their car, record it on their phone. I am an excellent student. I'm passionately curious about life. I love to learn. And with that and that alone, you'll have the edge over 99% of the people out there.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you, Rock. This has been a total pleasure and an absolute blessing to connect with you. So appreciate everything you've shared.
You got it, man. Pleasure, Brad.